Today is December 26, 2014, and we are here today with Mary Ellen Dors, who at the time she worked for General Motors Corporation was known as Mary Ellen Green.
Correct.
And what department did you work in?
Interiors.
Okay, and what year was that?
I was hired in June of 1950, and I worked until, I think, October of 53.
So 3 years, approximately. And you have a very interesting story to tell the Corvair listening audience or viewing audience. And what is that story?
I was asked to bring the car that I drove, which was given to me by my dad for a graduation present, was a Renault 4CV, the little bug with the engine in the rear. And since the GM knew that, they asked me to bring it to Research Building B, which is known as the Argonaut Building. It's the building behind General Motors Building, where styling was, to bring it and let them look at it and measure it. I thought that's fine. So they gave me instructions. I drove around the back of the building and put it on the elevator. Car elevators are built for 20-foot cars, and so I got in this huge elevator and went up to the 9th floor, which was for styling, and drove it off and drove it right to the very door of my interior studio and left the key in the car and opened the door and walked into the studio. And I think to this day I'm probably the only one who has really driven to work. Right, yeah, to the door.
Right to your door.
The hallway was very large because it was a wood floor and large enough so that a clay buck could be worked on in that large area. And so they had the clay heating machines and the clay modders were there, and they would put the hot stuff on the wooden frame of the bucks in order to make they used that space for car design work. And then my car disappeared. They drove it into one of the engineering rooms and they measured it. The thing was, the Renault, as you probably know, had the independent rear axles, and the rear engine, and they were very interested in that. They did not tell me why they wanted it, and I don't know for sure why they wanted it. But when the Corvair came out later, it was evident that they had this in mind, and they made a complete drawing of the car, I'm sure. I never saw it. I never saw the drawing. At that time, if you were in one studio, you were not allowed to go to any other studio. I could not go into Chevy, Cadillac, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, none of them. I stayed in interiors. They brought information to me. And even Chevy couldn't go into Pontiac, Pontiac couldn't go into Cadillac. Nobody could interchange. Now it's different. But at that time, Harley Earl and Christensen and Mitchell were the only ones who would wander around, go into the different studios. And the designers, I guess the feeling was they didn't want them to interact and take designs from one another. But Harley Earl could, and he did. I understand that he would go in after hours, and he had a big kind of a cloth to put over your your desk while you were away. So it was black, it just covered the desk. And after hours, Harley Earl would go in and he would see something, and maybe that was in Chevy studio, and the next day he would go into Buick or someplace, and he would say, what about doing a tail light like this, And nobody but Harley Earl would know that it came from another studio, but he would fix them up so that the cars were, they were similar. Of course, they were using similar body structure, different bodies, but he could control it. He was
Interesting.
Good at that.
Interesting. So this Renault of yours, what year was that car?
Well, I graduated in 1950, and it was a new car, so it had to be 50, and it was really not built for Midwest winters, I can tell you that. With the engine in the rear, to bring up enough heat to defrost the windshield was a problem. And so it would freeze up. It was a lousy car in the winter, I can tell you that.
How long did they keep your car for in that studio where they were measuring?
I drove it home.
Oh, so they just kept it for the day? It was only that one day? Wow. And that was up on the 9th floor. Well, I'll be darned.
And so I drove home from work.
So you definitely your car must have been used as one of the investigation.
Well, I'm sure they wanted to
Cars
see
for- yeah.
what made it tick. You
Oh,
know.
sure. Since it was, Corvair was the only rear engine air-cooled car that they had ever.
Yeah, sure, but
made.
Volkswagen was
Oh,
rear
yeah.
engine, but they had pancake engine. It was a totally different animal.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. We sure appreciate it. It's definitely an integral part of the Corvair history.
Well, and I can't remember what year it was. I don't think it was, I'm sure it was not 1950. It could have been 51. It could have been 52. Probably, well, it would have to be January or February. It was not winter because the car wasn't wet. I didn't leave messy car, drippings on the
Right.
floor.
Right.
So it wasn't winter. It could have been as late as summer of 1953, but it was not winter and messy tires. I drove it, it was clean. And I'm just trying to fix the date.
Yeah, oh, that's
It
good,
wasn't-
yeah.
it
And they
wasn't
obviously
raining,
knew you
and it
were
wasn't
driving.
snow,
Yeah.
and the car had clean wheels when I brought it in.
Were these engineers who were looking at your car?
Well, they had to be,
Yeah, yeah.
It was just down the hall from engineering, and double doors right down there. And so when I parked the car, it was aimed toward the double doors, and then on the side there was the door to the interior studio.
What a time to work at General Motors. The golden era of car making.
Yes, it
honestly.
was totally different than Tech Center now. I mean, it was low grade, low grade building, low grade everything. Oh, the entrance office to interiors was very pretty. Oh, glass, nice carpet, pretty secretary. Her name was Eleanor, and nice desks for Henry D.S. Love. He was my boss. And but then you go in the back room, and that's where we were, and it was pretty cut and dry.
And you mentioned also in 1953, you said you got a Corvair seat?
I can't tell you exactly when it probably was 1953. It was one of the last things, and it came into the studio. It had to be brought in to us because we couldn't go anywhere else. Anything from the other studios had to be brought to us. And we had a seat, and I'm not sure whether it was Corvair. I think it was too late to be a Corvette because a Corvette was already done by that time.
I see.
And so it must have been a Corvair seat.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we appreciate you telling us all these things. We thank you and appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.